Welcome back to the Fast Life Podcast, which is brought to you by Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. For the last 8 years, I have exclusively worn Simpson motorcycle helmets from around town to my yearly cross-country travels. My go-to for 2024 has been the Carbon Outlaw Bandit, which has the most secure visor detents in a helmet I've ever experienced. The Outlaw is also the lightest helmet I've ever worn, which is essential on long rides. Head on over to simpsonmotorcyclehelmets.com to check out all the models and options. Then lastly, give them a follow on the gram at Simpson Motorcycle Helmets. I recently drove to Daytona to pick up a new FXR project. Along the way, I stopped into Jacksonville, Florida to see Fish from Alleyway Kustoms. Fish has been on the podcast many times and is one amazingly skilled fabricator, painter, and all-around builder. He is also an invited builder on this year's Born Free Texas event. So let's hear from Fish on today's episode. Let's go.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
What fancy topics are we going to talk about, Chase?
You're the
Great.
fancy topic of today. It's I was when I was driving down here, I reached out to you last week. I saw a post. Well, originally I saw when Jason and Daryl put up together the list, I thought they were only going to do Texas builders. And then when I saw your name, I was like, fuck yeah. Because
so stoked.
it's been, 2 years? I want to say the last time we did a podcast was 21. Because I came out here for a camp out.
Yeah. I was trying to remember too.
Yeah, it's 21.
Been a while.
Because 20 was the first one, I think. I think 21 was the first one as well, but you flew to my house.
Yeah.
And then I came back out here or something like that.
I was thinking about that the other day when we drove through downtown Dallas and you didn't say anything to me and we were driving right by where JFK got shot. And I was like, I remember this from Discovery Channel. But yeah, man, no, I'm super stoked to be a part of, I feel like we got some friends in Texas and it's going to be a good thing to be a part of. I know Oliver's been bugging me at the congregation show every year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, soon. And it just kind of everything fell into place, especially with these parts. I had, because that knucklehead's not done yet. Mm-hmm. And when those parts, I was like, well, I got 2 bikes, so.
Yeah, I mean, you can't beat it. I mean, you got, what was the last big build? Was it the Francine one that you did for Born Free? Was that 19?
That was 19 because 20 is the year we went because of COVID. So we went on the year that wasn't our year because it got bumped.
That's right. Because I remember, So I met you at Jason's show in Lakeland.
2020.
2020. Yeah, it was December, I think, or no, right in there.
Yeah, it was late in the year. Yeah, it was super late in the year. But that's the last, I've done a bunch of other bikes, but that's the last one of that caliber that I was telling a couple different people, it's nice to get into doing one where it's everything, one off. I had been doing some framework, and this bike is the first one that, even though I used a cradle, it's basically a complete frame, which I've been wanting to.
So what do you do? Just put like the frame in the jig, get it all in the right spot, and then once that's mounted in, the cradle's mounted in, then you cut all that shit off and then start piecing it back together? Or
yeah, well, all I had was like a mysterious cradle.
Oh, so you didn't have the top.
Yeah, and I had used it, I painted it up when I did that gold paint job I just finished for our friend Ken Napier up in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And I painted it up because that was going to be my display for the knucklehead when I get it back, and I was just going to sit it over there.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I wanted to do a single loop frame, and my original plan was to use the foot controls that we manufacture, the further forward mid controls, and they would need the stock front foot control mount positions there. That's why I was like, oh, well, the cradle will work perfect. And with the frame jig, that's the good thing about the frame jig, the Newman jig, is that once you level it and you start with your motor and transmission being level and where they go, then everything else can go from there.
Oh, so you don't even have to start with it and start cutting it. You can just put it back.
It was kind of twisted. So we got the motor in and then had to twist the transmission to get it to sit nice and square, and then it's just awesome. Now, everything is.
I'm pretty much just like scouring Facebook Marketplace and waiting for somebody to have one of these. They pretty much decided that they don't want to build bikes like that level.
Right.
And then I'm going to swoop in.
They're worth their weight in gold, man.
I mean, literally, when I get to the hotel tonight, for probably the next hour before I go to bed, I'll be on Marketplace on this entire route here in home just to see if there's anything on the way I might be able to just scoop up while I'm out here. So I'm starting to get that bug of like wanting to go find stuff like parts, swap meet stuff, but I feel like swap meets you're finding something somebody else already found, so you're paying a little bit more of a premium than if you are just in like Marketplace trying to look in the background of the photo to see if there's any other parts back there.
Well, I mean, I love swap meets. The con of them is that you don't know why something was taken off. Yeah. Something, and you can kind of potentially get something that's a little funky, but there's a lot of good stuff out there still too, Yeah. But yeah, the frame, I had portions of like a knockoff hardtail section that was also twisted. And that's, it got me thinking about how many, because I have a different frame jig that's not as nice as that one. And I think about all the different hardtails I would get in, and I'm like, or people want me to hardtail a swing arm frame. And I'm like, man, I don't know about this hardtail. And now I know with that one being that precise why, because they're all, you're better off, I think, isn't it junior? I think Juniors makes a whole axle plate, all the bent pieces. You're way better off just getting that and putting it in there, because with the way that I designed that frame for the Born Free bike, the top part of the hardtail needed to come up anyway to make it a clean swoop, but it was super twisted. It was super twisted, but
So the last couple of years, like, what's been the main gig? I mean, you said this current Born Free bike is the first one of this caliber. So you just, like you said, been hardtailing little fabrication projects.
No, we built. I probably built 5 or 6 other bikes. Some shovel heads. I'm trying to think. 2 FXRs. I did Tom's generator shovel, that blue bike, which is a really nice bike. Hardtailed that frame. But it's just stuff like Tom's a real good friend of mine. I used to skate with him. Yeah. Everybody called him Kettle back in the day. He was a sponsored amateur like I was, toured all around the country, and was a very good skateboarder. And he wanted to build a bike where he kind of supported other people that manufactured parts. So he got like a headlight from so-and-so and, all these different components. And so we kind of put the bike together as Tom would have designed it. And then that's what started the foot controls that we started manufacturing, because I made a set. Tom's 6'1" or 6'2", I'm 6'1", so neither one of us fit on mid-control bikes. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's what started all that, and the reason why we started manufacturing was because other people saw them and were like, man, you should make these. I'm like, I don't know, and because they were specifically for slab side motors, generator motors, So then, of course, I get 6 dozen of them cut and ready to be put together. And everyone's like, well, will they go on an Evo motor? Will they go on a cone motor? I'm like, kind of, with some different spacing and, but anyway, to answer your question, there's been a bunch of different bikes that, we handled ground up. They just haven't been as, like I was telling you earlier, we were going to use our mid controls on the Born Free bike, and I'm like, man, I just feel like this bike needs everything from scratch, everything, because I don't like to be restricted with, I like to find something that's going to be used that's significant. With our Born Free bike, we designed a headlight. I had a shape that I was trying to figure out where the shape came from, but it's actually a drain on one of our toilets. And I didn't realize after like however many months of taking a piss at the house that I'm looking at that every day. Yeah. And that was the shape. So I, had that headlight. I designed the headlight way before we even built the frame. I was like, okay, well, this will be something that I kind of want to try to take the shape, and if we can, repeat it through it and make it all make sense. So somewhere in the paint, it will have probably one of those shapes. You know, it has obviously a taillight to match, but we did the exhaust the same shape.
You did the resin pour thing the same shape too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, man. That's you know, the Born Free stuff. I remember the positive experience of some of the best work I've done is the stuff related to our panhead, the sign for it.
Yeah.
That's the best pinstriping I've done around lettering, just because it just puts you in that, you know where it's going to be seen. You know the audience that has at that point, and you know that there's, I mean, you don't want to look a fool.
Yeah.
You know, you want your stuff to be as right as the next person, because there's a mutual respect that, you know, goes on.
It forces you to rise to the occasion for the most part.
Yeah.
You know?
And now 45 days out, I'm paying the price of 5 crazy ideas.
Yeah.
You know, like the wheels came in that parts lot because I bought that. There was a tattooer up north that I met through a friend of a friend, and he was just getting out of bike building, but he collected a bunch of good parts. Well, in the parts stash was these high-shouldered aluminum rims, and there was this, you know, the front and rear set. The rear was 18-inch for a Midstar because he was going to run a hydraulic drum, so we ran a hydraulic drum on the Born Free bike. But the front is this weird 60s Triumph Cub hub, so it's a mini drum. I'm like, oh, that'll be cool, and I was like, I kind of shouldn't have a front brake, but with this bike, you know, I have realized that in getting the bikes together the way we like to get them together, I like to attempt, at least for now, this might change, so I don't want to be a hypocrite here, but for right now, I like to try to put the components on the bike, especially the brake components that would have belonged in 1966.
Okay.
You know, so there's a hydraulic drum or would have been a mechanical drum.
Some period
you know.
correctness to the whole situation.
Yeah, I just don't feel like this particular build, even though somebody back in 1966 probably wouldn't have the technology maybe to build a frame like this, maybe, you know. I mean, there was some cool shit going on, you know. But I didn't want to put a disc brake on it.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I would really like it to stop good, you know, I just wanted to, and I was like, well, if we're doing drum in the rear, then this little mini drum in the front that'll be cool.
Yeah.
But I got to make an axle for it. So that's thread cutting on the lathe that I dabbled in. I'm not an expert on, but you know, it's another thing that you have to take a couple days, hone your skills and pull it off, you know. But right now, I'm kind of second guessing how the brake cable's going to go. And all that's foreign because it's Triumph stuff, which will be really cool if I don't end up putting a spool wheel on it and, you know, at the last minute, because you got to get a cable made.
Yeah.
You know, my buddy Jared Weems is a Triumph guy. He was a Born Free builder. He's a real good dude. He's like, well, here's my cable people, but they're in England. So sooner the better.
Yeah.
I forgot the cable measurement from when the bike was all together. I think it's 39 inches. So I'm gonna order a 39-inch one and it'll be here, but if it's the wrong length in whatever 20-something days, you know, that's a variable. And you know, like the epoxy in the tank. I wanted to do something that you wouldn't expect to see out of an alleyway paint job. You know, like you might expect a pinstriped mural on the top of the tank.
Like in your paintwork, how do you think in the recent years have you like gone down any directions that have been kind of deviated from like what you've normally been doing? You know what I mean? Like, or is this the first time like doing a resin pour?
The very first time resin pour.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea because people do it, obviously, but it's not like an image transfer where you see a lot of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know where a lot of yourself as an airbrush artist and the artists that I came up under and learned from, how that's frowned upon, and I didn't want to. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh,
it's tempting.
It's tempting. I've been asked to do it before, and it never. I didn't say no, but it wouldn't have been for.
I actually don't even know how to do it, to be honest with you.
Man, I tried it one time.
I feel like if I know how to do it, I'll do it.
Right.
And I don't really want to do that because I don't.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing worse than someone seeing that and going, "You airbrush that?" Like, no, it's
right.
It's from a printer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, that, I've also realized as time has passed doing Alleyway, how many things, even though it was brought to my attention about skateboarding related to what we do, but it's skateboarding, there was always that don't be a poser.
Yeah.
There's always, you could buy all the gear, you could wear all the gear, but if you didn't show up to whatever street session, pool session, ramp session, and hold your own,
yeah.
and if you were kind of flaunting it, you're a poser.
Exactly.
So, and I thought back, I was like, well, that's never a good feeling. So why would we do it now as adults?
Having a brand like Arleness support the Fast Life podcast is absolutely surreal. Decades before I fell in love with motorcycles, the Ness brand was right there innovating and inspiring generation after generation. The brand's long-standing history and dedication to the custom motorcycle industry is truly remarkable. I have been fortunate enough to use many of their products on my Road Glide, Lowrider ST, and FXR chopper over these past few years. I love their 4 and 6 piston brake calipers, wheels, and bagger mid controls, and I used Arleness air cleaners on all my bikes. And even after thousands of miles, the parts still look and feel new. If you're interested in learning more about the Arleness motorcycle products, head on over to arleness.com where you can find out more information and see their vast catalog. And for our listeners, if you drop the Fast Life 10 offer code at checkout, you're going to save yourself 10% on your order. And don't forget to give these guys a follow on Instagram at Arleness Motorcycles to stay up to date with all the happenings around the brand. Now let's get back to the show. If you're looking for high quality motorcycle lighting, then check out Custom Dynamics. It doesn't matter if your motorcycle has been around the block or it's fresh off the showroom floor. They offer a wide range of LED lighting options for various models as well as custom applications. They have been in business for over 25 years and are committed to providing top-notch products at competitive prices. On my FXR chopper, I'm running one of their custom application LED taillight strips and their industry standard 5.75 LED headlight. And on my Lowrider ST, I have been running their Pro Beam Series LED turn signals, taillight, and headlight. You can check out their website at customdynamics.com to explore the available LED lighting options for your motorcycle. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Custom Dynamics.
I mean, there's plenty of those type of things, especially in paint. Like, I mean, I use a vinyl cutter. You know what I mean? I have a vinyl cutter. I taught myself 20 years ago how to design on a computer and make stencils. And I've done some stuff that I'm like, if I was to put together a new portfolio that I did 10, 15 years ago that I'm still proud of because of how intricate the logos or all the stuff would be. But at the same time, like, I have no desire to do it anymore. I have no desire really to do that. But
I have Chris Rosenberg do the logo that I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to speed up me transferring the bodies of the lettering because I'm going to outline that in pinstripe. That's just so I can throw some variegated down or whatever and then stripe it. And
I really, because I was telling you a little bit about this chopper that I want to build for next year. Thinking about paint, I think I have a color which I gave you, but like I really want to, go full Steve Gibson. You know what I mean? Like do a real mural on it. I've shied away from that for so many years of like going all in on a very more smaller scale, like scene based mural, and I'm way out of practice of airbrush. Like I airbrushed a skull on a helmet like 2 months ago, and that was the first time I airbrushed in a year and a half. That's how more like so far into these other like podcasting and photography and videos and shit I've been lately, as opposed to, trying to airbrush and, and I really want to get into lettering more, like hand lettering. So
I can get the outline good. It's the drop shadow.
I haven't even tried that shit.
And well, not a drop shadow, like a flame drop shadow, but picking light direction and beefing up the letters with a darker color. And man, it's like I get 75% of the letters done, and then I have to look at a reference and like, well, that's a strange script letter A, like a lowercase a or something, and where's it proper? We all know it goes at the bottom or to whatever side, but finding out that primo spot that makes it look right. And I just call up Mike Wilson. Hey, Mike, why does this not look right? He's like, oh yeah. He's always real nice with it.
Yeah, I still like you mess with one shot more, right? Don't you? I have some in a box that I need to pull down, and I just need to commit to some time just messing with it and getting familiar with how the paint flows.
I forgot, because I was like, we should just have a session where we'll set the house of color over here and we'll set the one shot over here. And I'm not really so sure that, with the one shot, I personally manipulate my line thickness by thinning, especially black. You know what I mean? Where I can't manipulate house of color like that.
Yeah. I've used one shot black a lot. I think it's like the way it feels and the way it covers, right?
Yeah.
And I know that some paints are just not really good at coverage.
Yeah.
By the time they are good at coverage, there's not enough viscosity, I think, to pull lines. It just wants to skip around and shit. But I'm not familiar with the paint. I don't know how to manipulate it like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like House of Color, I rarely stripe in orange because it's a very translucent color. And you'd almost have to stripe it 2 or 3 times to get the proper build up and not see through the pinstripe. So I just never fuck with it.
And I think that honestly, some of the one shot that I've gotten, some of it, I don't think they got their consistency right.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with that. Like after Brushmasters, when was that, 2018? That's what, nothing against any of those artists, because they did an amazing job of showing us as much as they could and what was going on in those couple days there. But it is equally, in my opinion, manipulating your palette as much as it is, pulling that technique, line and technique. And there's so much to all that, really. If you really want to pick it apart, and, I'm notorious for getting, it's not a wobble from my hand. It's a lump in the hairs of the brush. And, sometimes I'll just get it loaded up and I'll just keep pulling it and just make a mess out of my hands. But
That's what I do, yeah.
That brush stays in proper sword.
Whenever I'm paleting with my fingers, I can feel it.
Yeah.
I know, okay, this is where I can get a good... The thing is with House of Colors, you can't pull as long of a lines as you can with one shot because it doesn't flow as long because it's base coat, basically.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just something I've used my entire life, so I know I can pull, worst case 2 feet of it on the side of a bagger, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I envy the fact that like guys like Monty Rhodes and Jeremy Lucky Strike can go to Sturgis with a couple cans of paint in their bags, make a couple $100, cover their trip, striping bikes, and I'm, you know what I mean? Like that's, to me, that's really badass. You know what I'm saying?
Have you striped at an event?
No, I can do pinstripe designs, but I'm not the way they are. Like how you have your templates over there. That's how I am. Yeah. I'll draw it. And get all my spacing right, and then I'll transfer it. Then I'll just...
If I have to do a traditional 100% like that, when I was trying to pursue that a little bit after Brushmaster, so what I'd do is I'd set up, and I'd have the mural on the top of a tank, kind of already transferred with Sorrel.
Yeah.
And then I'd start it a little bit, and then if the event was slow, I'd have a separate table set up with everything, and I'd just stripe, and as it'd pick up, people would come and start. But... I had to transition that nervousness, and I absolutely cannot do it if you talk to me.
I used to tell people a lot. So I used to go to car shows and airbrush live. So I can do things in front of people.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me. But talking, I'd always have homies come to the shop and hang out while I'm doing stuff. So I can't answer questions as much as I can be a part of a conversation.
Right.
Like if it's 3 people here and everybody shoot the shit, I can listen and chime in.
Right, yeah.
But I can't sit there and just have a full-on conversation.
Yeah, I couldn't entertain a person coming up to the vending booth asking questions about the company and what are you doing. Like if you were asking questions about what I was striping, that's a different thing. But they'd be like, how much for a medium shirt? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing an eyeball right now. Like it's a circle,
Yeah, I've been saying lately on the podcast, I'm really kind of reinvigorated to want to paint more and actually just work more. Like I was just telling you when I got here, I'm kind of lusting to get after just little like manual labor right now. I feel like I've been just completely doing things that are not that, and so I feel weak, if you will. Like not weak, like just weak. Like I haven't flexed the muscle of sanding and polishing and body work and all these things that I've done my entire most of my life, to be honest with you. So it's like I really want to get back in the shop and get some get some more razor cuts on my fingers and,
Dude, I was telling a lot of people about the way the situation has transpired with the Born Free thing. It's, to have this all fall in place and to be doing it for a customers, it's his dream job for a few months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, if it wasn't 110, I'm still enjoying myself in 110 degree heat because I love doing all that stuff so much. But if it was fall and you're just cruising out and you're like, man, there's a couple welding days when it's 100 and you got to kill the fans, put on a jacket and a hood, and it's, it's a lot, but man, it's, I love working with the machines, learning I had to watch it. I was enjoying myself too much. I wasn't getting like paint stuff done or whatever. Yeah. I come in, my free time is 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. It's supposed to be. Yeah. That's where I come in. I might clean up a little bit or whatever, but I come in and that'll be something that project I'm doing or designing something. I just come in here, it's quiet, it's dark, play whatever music and, but it took, I don't remember the exact timeline, it took a handful of months to really get comfortable on how to measure with those machines.
How long have you had the machines? The mill and the lathes and stuff?
Year and a half since probably purchase. I had a 3-in-1 smithy. Okay. Which had I applied myself to really understand, I didn't mill a lot with that machine because I didn't invest in a vise. So luckily when I had a good friend hook me up at the mill, but then another very good friend of mine came in and helped me go through it and service it. And he's like, hey man, you got a hold of some of my buddies. We all donated this vise, which is a knockoff Kurt vise, which has been a couple grand, and it works just as good. But that is what makes everything stable. So I could have had a vise that was a little bit smaller than that on it. And another thing is the weight. That smithy machine, me and you, or maybe one of us could pick up that and move it around. Well, that mill right there, it's not, when you start doing your other stuff and kind of pushing the machine, it's torque, like when you're doing, for example, just plowing a 1-inch hole with an end mill and you got it kind of chalked up in the vise, you gotta, when you're taking it, you should probably do that with a smaller tool first, but sometimes you cheat, and that's when you'll see the machine start moving and start shaking a little bit. With that other smaller machine, it's not even coming close to that, know. But, I had a working knowledge of how that stuff went, but, my buddy Zipper was like, dude, he goes, one day a light bulb's gonna go off in your head when you're working with this stuff. And I was like, oh man, I think it already has, I wasn't being cocky or anything, but I was like, man, we did some stuff. And then I was like, oh. Yeah. And in manufacturing the parts, because those cast lights are an 832 screw that holds the ring that holds the lens in, and that distance there, you can measure 4.5 inches, or you can measure 4.505, 4.51, and that makes a difference in all that stuff a lot. And I was like, wow, that just totally made these products not only better quality, but also I can do 6 of them. As good as the casting's gonna have variations of shrinkage and different stuff like that, you know what I mean? But that's what made a huge difference in, like, for example, the backbone on the Born Free frame, I measured, and when I built that tank out of all the different throttle addiction components, you're not making one from scratch, but you have the shell, and I narrowed it, and then when you put the bottom plate on, before I did that, I did the top hat bungs in there. And I've been wanting to do this because I've seen other people Yeah, I wonder how,
basically what you're talking about is drilling through the frame, having hidden bolts to hold the tank on through the frame, the backbone, right? I've always wondered how well that is as far as, for someone like me, if I was going to ride it, put some miles on it. Would it crack the welds eventually? I mean, having the weight kind of on each side of it?
I kind of over-engineered that a lot. But it's still, we'll see how it does. It's not a huge tank, but we just put half a bowling ball on top of it. So
with the resin,
But the the beauty of the machines, though, is that I took the backbone and, you know, you find perfect center of your, I think that's 1.5 inch tubing. You find perfect center, so you know your hole, instead of doing it in a vise with the drill, that it's perfect, it's, you know, it's level, and then you mimic that on the bottom of the tank, and you set that sucker on there, and it's no more of, oh, maybe we should wallow this hole out a little bit more or whatever. It's right, you know, and that's.
How many gallons is that tank before you did the resin? Probably 1.2 or something like that.
Well, the difference in that tank and the reason why I built it with that kit is that I didn't want to go with the most narrow tank. Has a weird shape.
Yeah.
I think it's
almost teardroppy.
I think it's like 2 inches. And then the other one is 1 inch taken out of the center.
Yeah.
And the one that we did is 1.5 inches. So it's like a nice happy medium in between, but I don't think it ain't gonna hold much. You can probably get 30 miles.
Damn.
You know?
Well, especially with the resin thing. That's probably that's about a quart and a half.
Well, you know, a vulture skull's tall. That was the hard part, man.
Where did you find a vulture skull at?
There's a company that does them.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, they do real ones and they do knockoff ones. It's called Skulls Unlimited or something like that. And man, we thought it got lost in the mail. It took like almost a month to get here.
Damn.
So I'd been waiting on, like, you know, let's get this thing painted. And, you know, I was gonna build we'll call it the tray that holds everything for the measurements on the internet. And I'm like, I don't know. And then, you know, when you look at the vulture skull from a top view, it's not very spectacular.
Yeah.
And then I was gonna cut it in half and do it on the sides. And I was like, it looks a little cafe racer, you know what I mean? So to put the skull where it's cocked at a 3/4 angle and angled up like it's talking to you, that's pretty deep. That's like 2 inches deep into a tank that isn't that tall anyway. But it's chopper stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're building a show bike, so.
Well, I think it's just interesting, man. It's like employing all these different types of, you know, processes, from the, you know, the resin to the casting to, and that's one thing I've always admired about you and like the builds that you do, is that you're literally like one of the only dudes I know that do every freaking aspect of this. From tooling the seat, casting the parts, painting the bike, fabricating, you know, doing the assembly, designing this thing. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's like, it's just interesting, to say the least. You know what I mean?
Well, man, originally that was out of necessity, not having enough money to pay somebody. And I generally didn't like the way seats were shaped.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and then tool and leather is fun.
I don't know. Like, I really want to get into more shit. Not to cut you off or anything, but I really want to get into shaping seats and doing things myself as well. But I gotta see it done. Like, not on YouTube. I need to like, one day if you're sitting here shaping out the foam and laying out the stuff and I see the process, then I'm good. I mean, of course, I'm not good, like I'm gonna be perfect, but I know the process. Yeah. So now I can start applying creativity to the process and then doing my practice runs. You know,
man, the cool part about tooling leather, you know, you're basically taking it's almost like doing a tattoo.
Yeah.
And they look so good before you dye them. You know, like I almost hate, I see a lot of guys doing the tooled stuff on social media, and I just want to shoot them a message, go, man, how good did that look before you had to dye it black? Yeah. You know, because you can it's tricky to do the shading with the tools. I don't do a lot of traditional hammer shading, and a lot of I kind of use like a spoon method, where if the leather, in order to get it to shade, it has to retain a certain amount of water, because when you smash it, it gets darker. And that way, if you're doing a lighter dye, all that'll carry through and you can actually shade it, you know, like a piece of art. But it takes forever and it gives you a hell of a carpal tunnel, you know.
The last thing I need to do.
Yeah. After, you know, about 1.5 years of pursuing that, I was like, man, why is it like, really hurt. But it takes forever, man. It's hard to, like, I don't know Kurt from Bare Bones personally, but hats off to him, man. He knocks them out, man. They'll always look great.
Have you thought in getting into like the legit, hammer engraving? Not you hammering it, but like the actual hammer tool?
Yeah, my closest friend, Mike Wilson, has the air graver.
Yeah.
And we had it here. I played around with it for a while. I was supposed to try to handle the engraving on Francine, but my buddy Zipper that I was talking about, he actually is an engraver. He engraves guns, and he's who engraved everything on Francine.
Yeah, that's one of those. I mean, I've seen it done a million times, but like getting familiar holding it, and then because it's also that swivel vise kind of thing too.
Have you ever carved linoleum, like in high school when you did the?
I feel like I have.
We had to do like the in art class in high school. We had to do the linoleum patterns where you carved it out and then you rolled a roller on it. You did prints with it.
We used to do that scratch board thing, and yeah, we did do that. Now that I think about it.
So it's similar to that in that the tool has a V shape. Not that I have a working knowledge of engraving. And there's a bright cut and a dull cut, and when you lean the V, it does a brighter, deep. There's all kinds of different ways to manipulate that groove.
Yeah.
And it's I got cocky with it for a little bit. I was like, I'm gonna engrave the stuff on my pan head, and I'm like, that is a large.
I don't know if it was a June bug or a fat ass bee.
Some kind of bee is up in the lights.
Hopefully it will stay there.
Yeah.
Oh, nope. It's coming.
Maybe not. Only at night. I'm never here at night, so I don't know what goes on around here. Maybe.
Apparently I got some super bees out here. Oh, shit.
Just because we're doing a podcast.
What is that? Isn't that like a...
I don't know. I might try to kill it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Death becomes them.
I can get this. I had to get it up. That's
okay. So oh shit, yeah, that looks really good.
That's mostly the piece.
Fine.
That's mostly the pieces that Mike did.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, you got the swivel vise and but they make a different one that cuts deeper for like motorcycle parts and stuff. That's more for
like guns and
guns
and like tighter spaces, huh?
Yeah. But it's cool, but you can see how it rolls. Like that's a good deep one, but you can it can get away from you and cause a.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part about like being I don't know the right way to say it is, but it's like, you say it's out of necessity, but it's also like a wanderlust for skills. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think you have a hard time, which I do as well, like seeing something done and not wanting to try it or see if you can do it yourself.
Yeah, man. What I found, you started talking about it a little bit, that you start dabbling in so many different fields and trades that they get rusty. Like the aluminum, that like, man, I need to be welding aluminum weekly.
Yeah.
I need to be pinstriping weekly in order to
maintain it.
It just doesn't happen, when you're like, this bike build crunch. I know how long you can goof around.
Yeah.
I know how long you can be like, we got a little bit of time, and then I know when there's not time, and there's almost not time. So.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at earlier. It's like, now that I'm done with this trip, it's like I can start applying some effort towards all these ideas I've had over the last year that I had to put on hold because of this trip I was going to do. And now that it's done, it's like I walk in my shop and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to start welding more. I want to make an exhaust for this, but then it's like I need to paint. So it's like I'm back in the shop. I need to start working on the jobs, and I need to get to where I have a little bit of free time.
Did you get a welder?
Yeah, I got I bought over Christmas. I bought a TIG welder, an Everlast.
Oh, yeah.
I got one of those, so it does AC and DC, And then I got a nice multi-tool grinder situation. A bandsaw, but it's more of a chop saw bandsaw. Like it just takes its time and cuts it slow. Another grinder that's got some different shapes to it, or different grinding discs or whatever to it. Because mainly I want to be able to make an exhaust for every bike that I work on. And I did on my FXR. Welds aren't pretty, but I'm still kind of learning that machine and whatnot. But the FXR was the first time I ever welded steel. Like I learned how to TIG weld on stainless back in 2018, and then had a wreck in 2018. I had to sell my welder, and then I couldn't touch it until 2023. So I got another one, and now I'm kind of nowhere near ready to start making frames or do anything like that. But it's like I want to get a nice table, like I have a welding table. I want to get a nice heavy steel table. Because if I want to make a sissy bar, I want to be able to weld in the spots and shape it out and then bend it around that and do that stuff. You know what I mean?
And you don't want to be doing that on like that sort of flat table out there or whatever. We had a table that stayed at the old shop that was just a big flat piece of steel, and you could just tack bungs on it and all that stuff. But that stuff's a struggle, and I still putting that frame together really I feel like you're either trying to get a pretty weld. To me, I just stressed like, don't heat this thing up too much. I knew that there's going to be a certain amount of body fill that was going to go on that with the under the time constraints. I could have taken forever and blended it all together, but I'd rather have a straight frame with a little more body fill on it than trying to show my whatever for social media pictures.
But I think you're at a point with your work, obviously the years that you've been doing it. So, and that's the good thing about things like fabrication is there's always another way you can tackle it and add more challenge. Apply a different skill method or style method to it or whatever. Like you're saying, like you want to metal finish everything out with basically the welder and a grinder for the most part. As opposed to using filler. Well, that's years for me down the road. I just want to make sure it stays together and it's stout and good. And that's like the first step. And I'm trying to. It's the same thing I tell painters all the time that are getting into this stuff. They start doing their first custom graphics, but instead of just focusing on getting nice panels, like a nice factory panel pinstripe on each side of the tank, they want to do all this crazy shit and do leaf. And I was like, bro, just get the basic down and then grow into these other things instead of like wanting to do the baddest shit you've ever seen on your first try. It's like engraving, same thing. It's like if you take that approach on everything and work your way into the more skilled aspects.
Well, that's the very worst, as well as I do, to get, for example, an oval pattern on the side of a gas tank, and you think you're walking away from it and it's got some kink in it. And you're like, well, that kink's staying unless I just go ahead and redo everything right now, and I'm out. I love the wild ones in that regard, that you have, like you're saying, all that leeway just to kind of like, and you don't, it's so busy you don't know, but them simple ones are killers.
And that's, I've always tried to say, it's like, this is actually harder. And if you can master this, then that other stuff becomes easier. And like leaf, we've talked about leaf on other podcasts, but leaf for me was like a 10-year process to get it dialed. And it still gives me hell every once in a while. It's like, and honestly, I'm not doing it any different than I did originally. It just takes time to master.
Man, I was thinking about it the other day. That safe that I had a friend of mine, he was kind of freelancing in here for a little bit, helping me out. And we gold leafed a perimeter on that whole antique safe. I'm like, wow, all that happened and I can't get this little tank right. But it's because you haven't messed with it in, a month or two or whatever. And you know how finicky all that stuff is. And that's the hard stuff, man. I really like doing everything. That's what's been so refreshing about doing the Born Free build is like, cool. We have the ability to make all this stuff fit together. And that to me, I like that a lot. Like it all jives. There's nothing really out of place. And, I don't think there's anything that's going to be on this bike that isn't like handmade one off. Except for obviously the wheels and stuff like that.
What made you want to derake it? Which to let everybody know what you ended up going with the dimensions, like up on it.
So, well, what I wanted to do in that batch of parts I got, there was a 6-over narrowed Springer. There was the guy that got all this stuff from, Dave. He did a good job on a lot of stuff. It needed some refining, but for the most part, it was there. We had to straighten it a little bit, but I wanted to maybe go with a 2 or 4 over, but I was, with the 6, I'm like, well, let's just do the 6. And I really wanted, it was never really said about Francine, but I knew that was factory dimension bike, and it was always kind of a disclaimer, like, I was always saying, well, I wanted to do more, but I didn't want to cut up a perfect 1951 frame, And then at the same time, we had done, Brian Taylor is a guy that we've been doing a bunch of bikes for. He's become a good friend of ours, and we did his Miss Mary shovelhead bike. That's like an aqua green with root beer brown flames, and stock dimension. Tom's blue bike, Kettle's bike, stock dimension, and then I painted Ken Napier's knucklehead he just finished. He's up in Indiana, stock dimensions, and I'm like, man, I want to make a motorcycle that looks kind of normal, but when you sit it next to a stock frame bike, it's drastically different if you look at it close. And that was, I was like, well, I want to de-rake it.
Yeah.
I wanted to go. I talked to Bill Dodge about it a little bit at Bike Week, and he was like, "Oh, what are you gonna build next?" And I was like, "Man, it's still, I want to do something that you wouldn't expect us to do." Because I think a lot of people think that, my panhead Francine, which I love those, late 50s, early 60s style California Kustoms bikes, you know what I mean? But I didn't want to I just had to do a different frame, So that frame is, it's close to 3 inches, like two and some change up to back. So the wheelbase is shortened 2 inches. And it's about 1.25 inches higher front wheel to rear wheel. So the D-rake is actually more severe, but as it sits on the ground, it's about 26.5, 27. So it'll be a really good tight parking lot bike. And hopefully it'll do good at 100.
That's what when that's what I've heard, is that basically the D-rake makes it a little bit less stable at higher speeds. But that's why you would always see like a
steering stabilizer.
On those bikes. Because we have a lot of Indian Larry style bikes, not quite D-rake like that, but they were always.
I don't know if he ever did one D-raked more than. I mean, I hate to speak out of turn about it, but I don't want to say they're 28 degrees. But he ran a lot of steering stabilizers because he was part of, liked all that performance.
He was standing on the bikes and all that stuff.
Well, and just, he was all about, like, not really traditional. He's like, I want this motor to, he was an engine guy as much as he was.
Well, if the roads were anything like they are nowadays, you probably need a stabilizer on them out there in New York. So. Yeah, man. But yeah, it's been a fun frame. It'll be real different. Just a real tight bike, and the one-off foot controls are they're a little bit further back than a factory foot position, and they're 2 inches taller. So it's almost like a forward mid.
Yeah, forward tall mid.
Further forward mid.
Further forward tall mid for tall people.
There you go. Yeah, but I don't know. I love that look, and that kind of Midwest style. I think a lot of the Midwest style that got real famous was like some gnarly D-rake shit, like super high in the air, way back. Yeah. Not really my thing, but I think the premise, like one of my favorites one is like Bare Knuckles Knucklehead.
Yeah, that's a nice bike. Jane Doe.
Yeah, that fucker's badass.
Yeah,
it's a perfect looking situation there, but
they can get a little weird looking. Yeah. You know what I mean? But they can also be right on the money, like that bike. We haven't done a bike that's really that configuration since we did a bike called the Silverfish, which was made from a fat tire chopper. It had like a 113-inch S&S motor, 6-speed, but it had T-bars. And we rarely do any kind of T-bar thing. And I was like, man, I just want to do something that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't know we put together a fair amount of FXRs and,
a couple Dynas and stuff like that.
Yeah. Lots of Dynas here and there. That's my favorite. As much as I had that FXR that we just did for Brian Taylor was my FXR, and I'd love to be back on an FXR again, but man, I run all highway back and forth to the shop here, all Interstate 95, and I got to be able to go 80.
Yeah.
And I'm really not trying to blow that motor up, you know? So a Dyna, 2016 Dyna, like that one there makes a lot more sense. You're just cruising and, you know.
After twin cam and the FXR chop, man, I find it hard not to just do that on all the FXRs.
Yeah.
You know, because a 2000, let's just say 12 to 14 twin cam complete drivetrain, 6-speed, all the bells and whistles, 103. I mean, they're everywhere, all over the place for like $2,000 or less.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, a fucking
Done.
Baker 6-speed is $3,000 by itself. So it's like, you know, the amount of work it takes to put the twin cam in, especially when you go carbureted, it's so easy, so minimal compared to the ladder of like putting a big 113 or a 6-speed or any of that other shit in there.
Yeah, man. Well, that's going to add up, you know, because even like, what's an Ultima motor is like $4,000 or something, you know? Because I heard S&S isn't doing polished ones.
Oh, they're
anymore.
not.
Somebody told me that. I might be wrong, but you know, you can have $7,000 in a drivetrain, and like you said, you can have $2,000, and you know.
Yeah, and dude, those later model twin cams are bulletproof.
Over the past year, Cowboy Harley Davidson has been putting in the work to help bring together various aspects of the motorcycle culture within the Austin, Texas community. They have supported not only the podcast, but also many local bike events and shows, including our FXR tour. I want to express my gratitude to the entire staff at Cowboy Harley for their support. I've had the pleasure of purchasing 2 bikes from Cowboy Harley Davidson in my lifetime. Most recently, I bought a Lowrider ST, which was dialed in with a few custom parts that I pretty much got to have on every bike. Whether you are in the market for a new or used Harley Davidson or looking to get your motorcycle customized, repaired, or simply maintained, you can count on their professional parts and service departments to get your bike dialed. To get in touch with them, you can visit their website, cowboyharleyaustin.com, or simply drop in and start a conversation about your next or even your first Harley Davidson. And don't forget to give them a follow on the gram to stay up to date with all the other happenings and events going around in the Austin, Texas area. I have been using Lexin Moto products for the past 6 years, and they have been an integral part of my riding experience. My journey with them started with their original FT4 headset and tire pump, but now I've upgraded to their top-of-the-line Novus headset, which features 40mm Lexin Plus speakers, CVC and DSP noise cancellation technology. With the Mesh 3.0 power technology behind it, I can connect with up to 32 riders on any given ride. Their new P5 Advanced Smart Tire Pump is a must-have for every biker. I always keep one in my garage, and it comes in handy during long trips if my phone battery or tire pressure is low. For more information on these fantastic products, check out their website, lexin-moto.com, and don't forget to use the offer code FASTLIFE at checkout to save you 15% on your order. And lastly, head on over to Instagram and give these guys a follow at Lexin Moto.
There was like a couple years in like the 07 to like 09 range that a lot of the motors that I know of through people I know you're finding a lot of twin cams that just had shitty runouts in them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like badly put together. I mean, they'll still run, but you can't put a cam plate in and things like that. You know what I mean? I just feel like the twin cam is just easy. This FXR I'm picking up while I'm here, part of me wants to M8 it. All right, let me tell me what you think about this. So I feel like
I love the M8 subject.
But let's talk about building a bike and like this range of pricing of what it's worth and what you can get it paid for, right?
That's a good subject.
If you, let's just say a full fairing RT FXR, right? If it's running and riding and it's clean, it's pretty reliable, you can roughly get, depending on how clean it is, $8 to $10,000, right? Maybe $7, depending on how shitty it might be. But if it's running and riding, you can get that. But it seems like available cash to buy a bike seems to kind of cap at like $15,000, where there's a lot of people that could buy it. and then it skips to 30 grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a $15,000 to $30,000 bike that's a custom motorcycle is like hard to sell. Like that demographic of that kind of money in their pocket is hard to sell, because sometimes it's like, okay, well, I can buy this FXR or I can buy this new Lowrider ST cash.
Yeah.
Or this Road
right
Glide.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
But then the $30,000 price tag and up is where you start kind of getting into a different kind of group of buyers. They're like, I probably have a Road Glide or two. That bike's badass. I want it.
Yeah.
And I don't, it cost me $50 grand to build it. So let me buy that.
Yeah, it seems like those are people, like you're saying, that's their at least third motorcycle. That's not their prime one. That's not the one. We do a lot of like dynas for servicemen that, or have other employment now that, they're like, oh man, I've been wanting a bike, and they can get financed or whatever, you know what I mean? That's in the $15,000 price range. But yeah, that's a bizarre market, the over 30 grand.
Yeah. So if you think about it like this too, so let's say you're building it, right? You're customizing it. So I'm into this RT for $5,500, right? I bought it 4 months ago, sight unseen.
Yeah.
It's a reputable guy. Bought it sight unseen. Now I'm finally getting to come pick it up. So I'm 55 in it. Now I can throw a twin cam in it, a few more parts, but once I get over 10 grand, not even counting labor, like it's okay, if I'm 10 grand in, I can sell for 15, I make 5 grand. That's not bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if I'm painting it and all that other shit, it's kind of a $20,000 bike at that point. Mm-hmm. And the only way, so if I M8 it, that's a whole nother thing where, there's also a lot of M8s out there for 2 grand. So motor plant, like that whole situation is about the same. But if I'm an M8 it, there's no way I want to put a carburetor on an M8. I'd rather, now I'm going full injected on the whole thing. So now I got to get a wire harness, computer, controls, like there's the whole other parts you got to get.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot more fabrication work involved in fitting that in the motor or into the frame. Kind of sounds fun to me, you know what I mean, to be honest with you. But if I don't go all out, wheels, suspension, badass paint, done, then it's like that $20,000 to $25,000 bike.
It stays in the lower end.
But I'm like labor intensive and a lot more money in just getting it to be a runner at that price range. So it's like you either got to go all out with an M8, or you're building it for yourself on the cheap and you have no intentions of like trying to flip it. You know what I mean? It's
a very, very tough market. Every time I finish an FXR, I'm like, I'm never doing another one. It's tough to do that and have a shop with overhead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of people that can do them out of their garage, that's a lot of that market. And that's the argumentative point when you're going to sell. Like I get beat up on the dynas and I had to keep going back to that, but it's like, oh, well, I could put all that stuff on in my garage.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's not the point. If you don't have enough money, you go finance this from the Harley dealership you're riding right now.
Yeah.
I know you could probably put bolts together. That's cool, but you know what I mean? And he's just getting this big argument of like, oh, well, I know those are the parts and you're never getting your labor back, and it's tough, man. But
so like I was telling you in the shop earlier, it's like I get hit up a lot about how much to buy my FXR, which is not for sale, never will be, right? But I have been countering like, well, I can build you one. Mm-hmm. And I got with Corey, for main driving, we really dived in like what it would cost to build my bike, like on the low end, if you weren't going, like if you just did the $2,000 twin cam motor, I have my motor stock. There's no internals, no big bore, no cam, nothing like that. It's just a stock motor. I want it to be reliable. Like a low end is like 35 grand to build that, my FXR. Yeah. And you roughly got $20,000-ish, give or take, in parts, frame, and then you got about $15,000 in fabrication, paintwork, and assembly. Mm-hmm. And that's roughly at like $20 an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's crazy.
If you were to do it at $100 an hour, which is, let's just say, the middle ground for most fabrication shops, I think I did like a rough estimate of, glossing over, paint labor, fabrication labor, assembly labor, all the same rate. Let's just say it's $100. It would cost, for the amount of hours, it would cost $30,000 in labor to build that bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not if my name was Jesse James, I could probably sell my FXR for $70,000, but it's not. And There's no way I could get that.
I don't know, like, since this year has turned into a lot of bike building, where bike building around here was, we do 1, 2, 3 a year, something like that. And now that it's like, kind of needs to pay the bills, I'm like, it's almost impossible to do.
Yeah.
It's almost, you're not justifying, or you're not getting $100 and something an hour.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, really weird thing, but I mean, I wish we all did. That's for sure.
It's like a weird one, right? Because yes, not to complain, yes, I wish we were getting $100 an hour. But we pay the tax to do fun shit. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's $100 an hour, but yeah, I'll take $15 an hour.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Same way, with different bike builds, I've been like, well, I was telling somebody, and I think I offended them. I was like, well, you know what? Life's not too bad. We've never had to raffle a bike.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, they did. I was like, oh, I hope I didn't bum you out, But I mean, people are raffling bikes for 25 grand, chopper stuff. And I'm like, you see them like, dude, that's a really nice bike. Mm-hmm. I hold out. I'm like, nah, I'm not letting that one go for that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like choppers, I don't have a customer base for that. I really don't have a customer base for mine either, but you just got to hope that like one out of whatever amount of followers you have or attention you have through whatever, really likes that bike. I found that a lot of the people that end up doing a lot of work with me, they don't have big followings on social media. Mm-mm. They kind of creep on it, and they follow a lot of shit you do, and the next thing you know, they just, hey man, I want that, and then they cash it out. No issues.
Yeah.
Become good friends.
Yeah, I mean, they don't, like our friend Brian Taylor, I hit him up when I was coming here to the shop. I was like, hey man, I'm doing a podcast with Jace tonight. You cool if I mention your name? And that was a 50-50.
Yeah.
He might have been like, nah, leave me out, I'm good.
Yeah.
Because he don't care. He does stuff for himself, and it's, that Miss Mary bike, that shovelhead, he's like, that's in my kid's will. That bike's not ever going anywhere. And I do a lot of work for people like that. They're like, nah, this one ain't for sale.
That's cool. Doesn't it feel good to build a bike that has like some kind of sentimental value? Like,
yeah. Like,
if you really think about it, like, I mean, you don't have to think about it. Like, you put a lot of art into everything you do, from whether it's, fab, the paint, the leather, the resin, the fucking casting. It's like machining. It's like you take an artistic approach, and when you're making art, it feels good when it's being when it's being bought, owned, or consumed, or commissioned through someone that like, it's got a sentimental purpose to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that Miss Mary bike, originally we were going to cast a lot of the lights and stuff out of brass. And I was like, hey man, if you want to save some money, if you know any places that got some scrap brass, he's like, I'll see what I can do. And he comes down, he goes, man, and I don't remember exactly the gist of where it was one of his family members. He got some brass from, and I made the grips and the wheel spacers out of that, and that was one of the things he was most stoked on.
Damn.
That bike, he's like, yeah, man, like that. That's family heirloom
Don't you
stuff.
think that's what it was like? I mean, maybe not every one of the choppers are back in the day, but in the '60s or whatever. But like it feels like it has this aspect of like some friends helping out parts that, oh, this was from my buddy Jim, this was from Andrew, this was from I saved up to buy this one piece from the parts catalog or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you build these bikes based on like something a little bit different than I not to say that the way people do it now is wrong or whatever, but it has a more sentimental value when you attach more than like, I just want to have a popular bike on Instagram. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, tracking down a bunch of cool parts, or us making some stuff that, is one-off. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool, but I've been vibing on a lot of the, like Ed Roth stuff with this bike, that's why the bike's called the Vulture. Aside from a different band I was listening to, that I really like this one band, and the only song they have on the record that I like is called The Vulture. That's applicable to calling a motorcycle something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's also a part of like the vibe of, I think they used a buzzard back in the day with some of the Ed Roth cartoons. It was like the buzzard sitting on the thing, and he had the German helmet on and all that stuff, So we're, Mike Wilson's working some artwork for the T-shirts we're going to try to have done for Texas. And, Ed Roth and those guys always had like a saying around some of this stuff. So shirt's going to say, fools drool while vultures rule. I'm going to do that under the tank,
Nice.
and we found there's a guy, he's in Ireland, Flame Art Design on social media. He does like a lot of push rod collars and points covers and stuff. So he made us a set of push rod collars that say VLTR for vulture. And so that's cool to have. One of the guys that's part of the bike build is from Ireland. He's like first generation from Ireland, so that kind of worked out. So there'll be a bunch of parts on that bike, that are one off and fit just made just for it, but
Yeah, what's cool about it is that it's like you're building a show bike, you know what I mean? And I guess for me, I like to build things or try to do things as nice as I possibly can, but with the intention of just dogging the fuck out of it and tearing it up and riding it. So there's a lot of things I choose not to do because I'm like, okay, well that's probably gonna fuck up, on the road or wherever, or doing 1.1 gallons of fuel or whatever.
I wouldn't normally do that except for this is a show bike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why, Francine's tank's cut up quite a bit, but you can still get down the road on it all right, I do like to build bikes that are, the Vulture bike will still be a real rideable bike. So just have to stop a little bit more, But, I kind of like when they get a little, like Francine's got some dings and scratches and some wear and tear and some stuff that looks like, it's been ridden, but like Tom's blue bike, that's one of the bikes I'm really proud of as far as, again, Tom's a good friend and his bikes are that's his release.
Yeah.
And, that's how he gets his not freedom or whatever, but, he rides a lot on the weekends. And we finished the bike and I was like, well, it's not your first fresh motor, so you know what to do, but, creep around on it a little bit. And he sends me a picture. I forget what distance. He's way up in Georgia by himself on a Sunday. I'm like, well, thanks for having a lot of faith and, whatever. And he ran a bunch, like hundreds and hundreds of miles on that bike with very, very minimal problems, but like, I'm really proud of that bike and that there's been a couple hiccups, here and there because honestly, I didn't know how many miles he was putting on it.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, dude, you're doing like 250 miles a weekend on a rigid frame generator. I knew you were riding, but I didn't know you were like doing a huge loop, like all over the place and always on it. And I was like, yeah, man, let's get that thing in here.
For like people listening like that, I was actually talking to, on the way down here, I was talking to a friend on the phone. We were just kind of, both guys have been heavy in the performance motorcycle thing and we both still love those bikes. But we're at this point now where it's like it's been 7, 8, 9 years riding these type of bikes, and we're just like kind of lusting for something, a different feeling, like a different, not like, oh, this is better to just cruise, but it's like building or riding a bike that doesn't really allow you to ride it that way. It just kind of changes the experience, and you kind of enjoy it in a different way than I would enjoy a fucking all out bagger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The old bikes, man, they got a feel to them.
Yeah.
And when you get those things all dialed in, you're just doing your thing on it. Like I had a 62 Panhead, and I would just ride that thing everywhere. When I was playing in a band and we were recording a record, kind of around the corner on the other side of the river from here, we had a studio over there, and we were putting a lot of time in. Out there, and I would be there late. I'd get there, I'd be there all day, and I'd stay late in the night, and I'd ride my bike out there, and I never hesitated once to jump on that bike and ride it wherever. And I never even thought about that really, but like, you get them dialed in, they're pretty good to go, but there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize with a hydraulic drum brake, like you can't really And with a mechanical drum brake, you can't really ride that brake a whole lot. You get like a couple pumps before the pads are heating up and the drum's heating up and things are sticking. And I locked up the rear brake one day and didn't really even know any better. I was just out goofing around and I was stuck. I was like, shit, man. But that's the cool thing. You bond with them, when they're running right, especially with kickstart bikes. Man, when that bike's gonna fire. And when it fires first kick, you did everything right. Bike's happy with you. You're happy with it. It's going to be a good relationship. It's going to be a good day, and that's like a weird good feeling,
Yeah.
It's cool.
It does. Like I'll tell you this, like being on that FXR, which obviously it's a modern motor, so there's not much to worry about. But when you're 2,000 miles from your house, and if you have all the tools to fix anything that could fall off, but if anything breaks, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever you can get your hands on or whatever. And it's like, you just got to be a little bit more resourceful. So yeah, I think it does require a little bit more from individuals to enjoy certain types of motorcycling,
Yeah.
But I mean, man, you could do an all-out 136, whatever M8 bagger, and you could ride it to Sturgis and have more problems than.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what you did with riding a custom bike like that, 10,000 miles, shit, man, there's an unnerving of being in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Every time, especially like in the times of when it was, 100 plus degrees and you're kind of ripping across the desert. I'm doing 800 miles today and I'm just like, I want to get the fuck out of this heat. But it's like, so you're just beating the bike down and it just keeps taking it and everything keeps working and, you're so in tune with it. You know every sound, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know how, when something happens on the road, like you feel something different. Right now I'm very in love with that connection to a motorcycle. And I was saying this to a friend the other day. It's like, I also want a new modern road glide. Like I want one. And I rode one. I was in Sturgis a little bit and they don't give you a lot of feedback. It's so smooth.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying like it's crazy to ride a Harley and it be so smooth and fast and responsive.
Yeah.
The new ones are badass.
Yeah.
But I still like how this other one feels when you let out the throttle and it pulls your hand back around.
Right.
Or when you hear the compression releases going off, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's just something about that I really enjoy. And then there's this other aspect, like you said, to this. It's a custom bike that this thing was like chopped up in all these ways, and this is made by a friend of mine, and this is made by a friend of mine, and then my friend did this, and I actually made that.
Well,
and that worked. And it's
even in the assembly process, man, every one of those nuts and bolts has, required some Loctite being tightened to the proper torque spec. You can miss one. That's why you do shakedown rides. People miss stuff, especially if there's been multiple hands on it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Less hands, probably less likelihood you're going to have something like that happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But man, I really like, I was much more in my early years of, I've always been Harleys. Mm-hmm. I was never allowed to have motorcycles coming up, and when I finally got a bike by default because my other friends were into Harleys in '96, I got that bike right there, that 1971 Ironhead Sportster in a 69 frame. That's when Mike Wilson got it from me. But, I've never had any other bikes other than Harleys. And I really liked the feeling of not standing on the seat surfing them, but when you let go of the handlebars, it's a lot like, skateboarding.
Yeah.
It's a lot like that's one of my favorites is, hauling ass on a bike and you come up and you're getting off your exit or whatever and you just let go and you just kind of
cruising
and the bike's like riding straight and everything's smooth and that's just like being in touch with the bike, or having ridden that same motorcycle that much so how it's going to handle in a parking lot. And it's kind of whenever we're doing an old one, which is the majority of the time, I've really thought that I would ride that dyno a lot more. I got it to ride back and forth, to work a lot more, just to be riding, because I don't have a lot of free time. And man, it's like I feel like I want to stay in tune.
Yeah.
With the old stuff. I'm looking forward to kicking over the new bike and hearing it run. And I'm about due for taking my pan head out for a rip.
Yeah.
And just kind of, building a vintage bike for a vintage bike show. You're just in that zone. But
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like right now I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world. I've literally built this podcast on talking shit about everything. So, I'll put my foot in my mouth, but I'm just interested in something else right now. I'm still interested in all the modern bikes and the progressions that brands are going to be pushing them. And like I said, I'll probably end up getting one here pretty soon. But man, like, there's just so much untapped things that I've never experienced on motorcycling. And after riding my FXR across country, I don't think I really have it in me to be able to do that on a rigid very much longer in my life.
Yeah.
So for the sake of wanting to be able to scratch that itch and check that box, I want to make sure next year is the year I do a rigid, and maybe not ocean to ocean, but essentially across the country. You know what I mean? 1,000+ miles. But you have
That's
to ride
serious.
them. I mean, it's like everything else. Like, I can't go into this like with the intentions of riding and being on this bike the way I've been on my Bagger or my ST or hell, even the FXR. The FXR fucking rides pretty damn good.
yeah.
Another inch in the seat, it'd be the best bike I've ever had. You know what I mean? So I want to do a bike that, I've been wanting to slow down because of trying to photograph a lot more. It's like you just, when you're cruising by at a pace where you can just stop real quick and go get that shot or go explore that little spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As opposed to if you're just fucking going by.
Yeah. If I'm riding a more modern bike, I'm definitely thinking of it like my truck. When I'm on an older bike, especially a rigid frame bike, you're already, like you're saying, in that zone.
Dude, you take one of these bikes, like you take your panhead and you jump on 95 or whatever right here, sucks.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to keep up with all this other shit. But when you go take that one road that's parallel to the highway, or go the back way, and you're coming into these towns where you have to slow down to 30 miles an hour to get through, and then you
Well, that's what got
me.
me into it. Is the one trip I took with the Atlanta guys, man, and they had a panhead crew up that still do. Jimmy O'Brien and Shay Cannon, when Shay and I used to be close friends, and me and another guy came up and we were riding to the Smokeout. I forget what year this was. Probably that picture of that chopper with me standing with that pinstriper guy, that was 2004. And the drivetrain out of that bike went into the bike I was on, which was a Softail with a Springer. And that bike was called the Cyclops, but I was riding it and we rode, I was kind of ready to haul ass. My buddy that came up with me from Jacksonville, he had a CFL frame bike that was my bike that I sold him that he built. And man, we got up there, we stayed the night at Jimmy O'Brien's house, which is an old skater friend of mine. And we took off riding, and Jimmy had an Atlas. He's like, well, we're gonna make it where we make it today. And that was the best trip, that one of the best motorcycle trips I've ever been on in my life, where we just cruised, and there was a chase truck with a cooler full of beer.
Yeah.
And they had already made that route a little bit. So Jimmy knew of the places to pull off where there's a stream. This is like a canyon gorge or whatever, and we'd pull off, and some of them dudes are smoking weed, and we'd have a beer, and Shay blew a tire coming down this one mountain road, and not that it was really about the repairs or whatever, but just taking off on a trip like that, going back roads.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I got to get a panhead. And I came home from that trip, and I sold that bike to this guy, a local guy in Jacks Beach, Tommy Johnson, for 10 grand. And I bought a 62 panhead in Orlando. I had a picture of it, but I was like, I didn't even get the cashier's check out in my name. I go, Tommy, make it out to this guy.
Yeah.
And I drove down and got that bike because I wanted to be on a panhead after that trip, because I wanted to experience the slow ride, and everybody's kickstarting their bikes and I'm hitting the button, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, that Ironhead was a kick-only bike for a long time. And then after that bike, I my closest friend at the time, this guy Sarge, we were best friends for a long time, and he's one of the other guys that got me into bikes, and he had a shovel head that was 4-speed kick only. That was it was a Super Glide, and then one year we put all of our stuff in rigid frames. That's when I put that in a rigid frame. We had to move into trailers because we couldn't afford. We had low rent, but we could build bikes that year. We built them in the living rooms of the trailers. We fired them up at the same time, and he put that shovel head bike into a rigid frame. And when I traded that bike to Mike Wilson, I got the shovel head bike that he had actually at that time he put an Evo in it, but they were all kick only bikes. We all rode kick only bikes, and that's what we came up and. In 1996, you didn't have anybody to ride with.
Well, it's harder to find people, right?
But back then, I was 25 years old. And the only people we could fit in with was club dudes. That's the only people that were riding.
Yeah.
So we kind of got a taste of, there wasn't really any bike building, it was where you going with everybody and hanging out. And that was some of the best times. I met the realist guys that, that's all they were about were those bikes. Some of them had regular jobs, but we all went and rode Friday and Saturday. And man, if my bike wasn't running on the weekend, I was pissed.
Yeah.
Pissed, whatever problem. My battery was dead, usually resolved that. But if you had a starter problem or whatever, I wasn't too mechanically inclined. Honestly, back then, those dudes used to make fun of me, because I didn't really come up. My dad wasn't a mechanic, I learned how to work on stuff on Harleys.
Yeah.
And then when Mike Wilson got me into cars and some of those other tattoo guys, I got involved in doing cars. That's how I learned how to wrench on stuff, So if we weren't putting our heads together on how to fix our stuff, everybody wasn't riding. And there was 3 of us, me, Sarge, and Jerry Temple. And, we were the younger dudes. And fortunately, we could hang out with all those guys because, we could fight. And that was kind of a requirement back then because, man, you're going to real biker bars where, we used to run with this guy, his name was Redwood, Big Steve, he's dead now, and that guy was so big, they didn't make a pair of pants his legs would fit in. The kind of guys you'd be sitting at a bar and some other biker dude be talking some smack, and I seen that guy pick that guy up, set him back down on his bar stool, and kept on with the day. I was like, wow. Shit, man. Big jack boots and huge knives. Man, I never thought about it then. But you think about it now, it's like, wow, it's just different way to come into it. It's a testament to the way
the society has come, and I think the boom of motorcycles really opened the door. It revealed the curtain of the motorcycle lifestyle more to where it seemed more accessible for your doctors and lawyers because they had the money to do all the shit. So, but that's always been the oil and water mixture of the money that keeps this industry going, and then the real passionate people who keep this industry true and honest. You know what I mean? So it's they kind of you need them both, but they don't really mix very well.
So I'm happy to see it, man. I never thought it would be like that,
Yeah.
So many young people involved in motorcycles, not to sound like an old geezer, but, I'm happy that it's accessible.
Yeah.
And easy for somebody to go get into a $3,000 or $4,000 Sportster and put a sissy bar on it and kind of chopper it out, and they're riding around and having a good time.
When I did my Lowrider ST last year, when I bought it and I was customizing it, it was a great bike. I love it. The biggest question I kept getting asked was, could it replace my Road Glide? It's people had a lot. They've had 1 or 2 or maybe 3 Road Glides over the last X amount of years, and they loved the bike, but they wanted to scratch a new itch of I want to customize another bike. Whether you're bolting on or not, it doesn't matter. It's just, I wanted something new. I want to do something different. But they were always trying to weigh it out. Is it worth it to go from a Road Glide to a Lowrider ST? And what I kind of realized then, and now moving into this past year of doing the FXR, and now this next year kind of dabbling in some more chopper, air quote stuff, is I think that people that have been riding the performance motorcycles, I think some of them that have been doing it for a while are kind of looking for a new scratch, a new itch, but they might not be financially in a spot where they can have a Road Glide to the 9s and then a Lowrider ST to the 9s. So it's one or the other.
Yeah.
But realistically, you can get some decent bikes that you can kind of go that other direction for sub $3-4 grand. You know what I mean? I think that like motorcycles are very tribal, and it's like that in the chopper world too. It's like a tribal thing. You know, like I'm a this kind of guy or that kind of guy. And like I said, hypocrite Jace right here. I promoted that stuff, but
hey, that's one of my favorite parts about the podcast.
Mm-hmm. I'm just passionate about how I feel about everything.
Well, that's why I had to watch what I said about the traditional brake setup and make sure I phrased it correctly, and that's how I feel currently. Because a disc brake does stop good.
Yeah.
When we were breaking in Brian Taylor's Miss Mary bike, I was like, something about that bike. Mm-hmm. So I set it up. We started bending up those bars that are very similar to Francine's, but they're just a little bit taller. And I think they're a touch wider. Mm-hmm. And I would ride his bike, and then there's a barbecue place.
Yeah, I saw it coming in.
Well, not that one.
The other one?
That was kind of sketchy.
It was.
a little bit. But way up there's it's a chain, it's a bearded pig, but sometimes on Saturdays we don't get together and ride up there. So I'd be riding Brian's Miss Mary bike, working out the kinks, and then I'd hop on my panhead and ride it up to barbecue. I was like, man, I love my panhead, but they handle completely different. Like, why? Mm-hmm. And I never figured out why that bike, or it just rode so much better.
Yeah. I think that all the different nuances of why certain, like if
but
you're
the disc brake is what I was going back to. Yeah, it stops good.
Well, those nuances of why you want to build a bike like that. Like in my head, I have a bike I want to build where I do want some modern technology, but I want a stance, and I want a rigid, and I want a feeling that's more, the aesthetic of a chopper, if you will. It will be a chopper.
You're talking about doing a narrow.
Like a narrow bike, but I want disc brakes. Like I don't want to make life harder than it needs to be. Like it's, to me, the thing about this bike is not about scratching an itch of creating something period correct. It's about it's about doing my first chopper I've ever done. Yeah. Whatever that looks like, right? And then when you start navigating down that path of like, okay, well, I want to do another one. Eventually, I might come to that threshold of like, you know what? I don't know what it is. I've been digging magazines or whatever. I want to do something that's like 60s or 70s or 80s period correct, and I want it to be all like this. A lot of FXRs do that. They want to go ball mill, all Nest stuff from back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so for certain things, like it makes sense. Like, but you have to get to that point where it's like something you want to do for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a place to ride. I mean, one of the things that is a little bit of a bummer about how far away my wife and I live from the shop is that, I mean, I've done it before because the other shop was an equal distance. It was just a little bit further east than where this place is at. And I had a handful of, I had my 48 panhead that I'd ride back and forth, but you got to take a lot of back roads, man. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of ready to get here and
get to work,
get it on. I was same guy, Jimmy O'Brien from Atlanta. I saw him. They did a big thing up at Kona at the skate park, and we're talking, and he's like, why would you want to go the interstate the whole way to work? I just go the back roads. So I'm like, because I'm not like goofing off all day, man. I mean, not to imply that Jimmy goofs off or whatever, because Jimmy's a great dude, but I was like, yeah, man, I just need to get there, man. I can, get there and get started.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a time and place. Like sometimes you walk out the house, you're like, today feels like the day I just got to ride this bike there.
There was a couple, that orange Dyna that we finished, I know it's not chopper stuff, but that orange Dyna, another guy that we become friends with bought it, this guy Marcus. Well, that bike was gifted to me. It came out of a storage unit. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to build some kind of chopper or something. We were going to do multiple things with it. And ended up, I was like, man, we're going to tear this thing down. It'd be easier. I got a title for it. It'd be easier just to get it back to a Dyna, and I know that, it can go to a nice home.
Yeah.
Man, I got that bike going, and I hadn't rode a suspension bike in a while, and I was out like shaking it down. I just went for a ride for like an hour and a half. Just went goofing around.
Yeah.
It's great when it's like that.
Yeah, we're starting to hit the weather in Texas. Like it's actually last year, it was pretty miserable all the way until almost the end of September. And of course I left this week, but it's looking like we're going to be mainly 80s this week as a high. And so I'm just kind of like, we're starting to get into our perfect weather in Texas.
And I'm ready. I'm ready.
When does it start to cool off here?
Man, my whole life living here, We only used to get like super crazy heat for a couple months, and now it seems like it drags on. Where, you used to be able to say, up September, that first time you walk out of the house in the morning, it's going to be, it's like 60 degrees, and now it seems like it just drags on longer and longer, and we're waiting for it, man, because it's, when I came, today coming back to put in a couple hours before you got here, I'm never really here at that hour.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it's 95 degrees inside here. Holy crap.
Yeah.
That's 6:45. I'm like, man, it's gonna be dark in like an hour. It's still 95 degrees. But,
well, the same thing's happening in Texas. I'm not gonna go full conspiracy. All global warming's making this shit suck. But it's like, in the summertime, it's so hot. And then as you know, with a paint booth, even if you AC your shop, as soon as you turn the paint booth off, it sucks everything out.
Oh yeah.
So I try to do most of my traveling in the summertime, and that way it's just like I turn the AC off, the shop exists, but first off, most people are riding all over the place, so I don't have anybody's shit hostage.
Yeah.
And then I go out and do as many podcasts as whatever kind of trips I want to do, and just grind through the winter, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I have AC at the shop, but same, dude. It's like that electricity bill, if it's 100 degrees outside and I have that shop just trying to keep it at like a high 70 degrees, which is comfortable in a shop, bro, it's like almost as much as my rent to run the AC. You know what I mean? And it's pretty gnarly.
That's why I like just this room. I'd have this room a little bit smaller, even though it cools this area pretty good. Like when I was doing the resin stuff, I had, with that AC unit turned down to 73, it stayed at like 76.
Yeah.
Which makes it tolerable to be able to go into the booth. Because I do like shooting in the heat.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like clear flows better, like paint flows better, because I'm a heavy clear guy.
Yeah.
If anything on my coat's a clear, I'm like, easy, Tiger. It's only the second coat. Don't go for high flow.
I'm definitely more of a thicker coats. I'm definitely toting the line of a run or a sag.
Good, I don't feel so bad.
But in the wintertime, it gets pretty cool in Dallas too, but not too gnarly. But so I run like a diesel heater and the heater in the shop. So I'll get the diesel heater to get it to about 70 degrees in the shop, and then I'll use the main heater to kind of maintain it. And then when I turn
like a floor, like a
floor
kerosene
diesel heater,
type one,
because it's like for the shop to just maintain that all day, all night, it's too much. You know what I mean? So it's like 70 degrees all winter is typically what it is in the shop, and then that way it's like I already know, like, same reducer, same hardeners. I don't have to buy like 4 different ones and stuff.
Shoot, I got to do that. I crank the paint booth door open when it's like in the 30s. I just run that thing with the door open until it heats that whole room up to about 70 something.
I also have like you have a booth like that. My booth is about your size, but I have like one of those floor space heaters, you know what I mean? And I put it in my bathroom. And so since I mainly paint helmets or like smaller parts, after it's kind of tacked, I'll take it and put it in the bathroom, and I just let that heater bake it all night.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? A really small confined room, you know what I mean? So that heater like just goes gnarly in there, and then coming in next day, middle of winter, 30 degrees outside, it's ready to sand and buff or whatever the case may be. So
shop in there is pretty cold. The main room in there, the fab room and the assembly, even though I can assemble in here, but I got a big monkey suit, insulated. Run that floor heater about 3 feet from you. Move it around. I'll have it right by the mill, just doing stuff.
I'm too. I don't do well with like constriction of things. Like I love when it gets to winter and I can just throw like a light like crew neck sweatshirt on or something like that.
Yeah,
that's my favorite. But like I can't hoodie all day. It's too confined.
I got off the hoodies this past year and I'm back on the crew neck.
I've been crew necking for last year.
Yeah, I like them, man. I like them, but I'm with you, man. I don't really function too good, super bundled up. But I mean, I come from the construction background for years.
Yeah.
You had to survive on a job site, and
couldn't imagine.
That shit was burly. If you got on a job site that was in like a neighborhood where you couldn't have a fire, man.
It's crazy
good.
about up here in Jacksonville. It's like you're Florida, but you're not Miami. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or Tampa or whatever.
Still get cold.
Where's the line that it's like it stays pretty good all winter? What is it, like Orlando South?
Shit, it's more down West Palm, I'd say. You know, Orlando still gets a little chilly, I think, without having lived there, you know, but it's still pretty.
I mean, when I first met my wife, I flew out to Fort Lauderdale to meet her, hang out for a weekend, and we went to the beach, and it was February.
Yeah.
You know, in the water and everything. I was like, God damn.
Well, I mean,
snowing.
It's hit or miss, you know. Like many years of my childhood, I remember being in shorts on Christmas, you know, on a new bicycle, riding around the neighborhood, messing with all the other kids, you know. And then some years, you know, rarely snows.
Yeah, don't get that much, huh? Yeah, I feel like same thing in Dallas. Like it's you could pretty much ride all the way until January, and then in January is where you start to get more consistently below 40, you know, days.
Yeah.
But not much. We don't really. It doesn't stay there long. A cold front will come through. It'll be like that for 2 or 3 days, and then it's back up into the 50s.
I think as I get a little older, I think I have a 40-degree cutoff.
Yeah.
I spent plenty of times. Shoot, man, them guys that got me into bikes, they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Jerry Temple used to be like, "It's the coldest day of the year. We're riding, fellas." I'm like, "What do you mean? Come on, we're going to see some punk rock bands play." And we'd pull up, and all my skater buddies would be like, "What are y'all doing, man?" You know, they didn't really make it. I mean, I'm sure it existed, but it really wasn't condoned to be wearing like kind of cooler, like riding gear, like Carhartt stuff or whatever. The only thing we knew is like when I got that Ironhead, I went to the Harley dealership and bought a leather jacket that I still have to this day. That's a Harley one, you know. So we'd pull up, and I mean, it wasn't anybody really trying to be the Ramones or nothing at a punk rock show, skating, you know. I mean, I had a couple friends that, you know, where they were super punk rock, but basically we'd roll up in full biker gear, and they're like, "What are you guys doing?
Judas Priest looking.
You guys are bikers now. Like you don't know anything." Shit, 10 years later, everybody's getting bikes, you know. But yeah, I've put a lot in the fucking cold, man. A lot in the rain, you know. Not so much anymore.
I wear a Patagonia jacket.
I know. I want to get on.
It is so nice, dude. And it bundles up like this, as big as this resin piece. And that thing, like in 40 degrees, like it holds your heat perfect, and it blocks the wind coming in. So what I usually do is like, I throw it underneath my sweatshirt or my hoodie. That way no one can see the gay.
Right. The camping attire on bike.
Man, that thing fucking slaps, dude. It's like like $100 or $50 or $200, but like the way they pack up so small, like you can't beat the savings of space.
Yeah.
Because it's warmer than a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Right? And if you've ever tried to fold up a leather jacket, you know those days when you leave the house and it's like, you know, 50 and then it gets up to 80.
Yeah.
And then goes back to 50 and you're like trying to make it home before it drops back down and shit.
Man, that's what I call them. I guess they're called old, you know, not old timers, but them older guys that I got involved with riding bikes with. They're like, "Don't leave the house without your leather." Yeah, and we'd be at some place. Well, there was a biker bar that was on this area of town. It's called the Rooster, and it's a shame that place is gone, man, because it was always like every Sunday it was like bike night.
For real.
Oh, it was cool. You know, it's for what it was. You know, there was a lot of, you know, regular rider people there, but there was a lot of, you know, it's where everybody kind of went, man. It could rain that morning into like noon, and you could hit that place at 3:00 in the afternoon and it'd be packed. You know, they'd have some band playing. That was one of the funnier times when me and my wife met. We're there, and you know, she had coming from up in DC, she'd been around bike stuff and whatever, and been to biker bars and stuff. And we're out there one afternoon, and man, there's like a 80-year-old old lady dumps them out.
Hell yeah.
Stands up on the picnic table. And like me and her just kind of started dating, you know, and we're kind of like, not an awkward moment, but we're just busting out laughing, and everyone else is kind of serious. And we're like, this shit's hilarious, you know. But that's where everybody kind of went, man. There's not too many bars like that around anymore where, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we still got strokers where we're doing the pre-party and stuff, but
Man, I've never been. I'm looking forward to going, man.
Dude, get there early and let's put the bike in, because so we have the whole FXR tour guys. We got an area for them where we're gonna have it kind of roped off, because it floods in bikes, right? So if you get there, let's just say like 5, you get the bike rolled in there so it can be on display kind of thing. I think it'd be sick.
So,
When are you gonna leave here though?
that morning.
So I left my house at 4:30 and I got here at 9, but I also lost an hour.
Right, so we're going to gain.
1 hour. Yeah.
I was going to leave at 3.
So if you leave at 3 and
Should put us there by 6.
yeah, you should be fine. Yeah, because honestly, I stopped. My favorite place is Moe's, the burrito joint.
Oh, yeah.
I can't pass one because we don't have them in Dallas. So as soon as I hit Pensacola, I got one of those, and then just every time I get to Florida, I'm scared to go fast like everybody else because it's always cops everywhere.
Yeah.
But by the time I hit Tallahassee, I'm so used to it that I'm just like 90 miles an hour
Right,
the whole way.
right,
So
yeah.
I got here a lot quicker than I thought I was, but.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't really figured out. For a minute there, we were going to caravan with 2 trailers because I thought the Death Machine, that takes up 2 bikes on my trailer. Otherwise, I can take 4. So we might all go in my truck because those got Brian Taylor and his friend Kevin, the tattoo artist from up there, is coming down. We're all going.
Yeah.
So depending on how we do it. But yeah, I don't want to miss the pre-party because I've never been there, and I want to do as much stuff as possible there. So
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is. Did I take you to the bike night? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's just we have a cool city and a cool scene. It's still small though, so it's still.
I had a good time that time we were down there, downtown.
And I think that the Strokers thing, it's like, there's just a lot of history of like that era of choppers with that stuff, and Rick opens up his actual main shop, which has kind of like a museum in it with all his old bikes and some old school shit that was he's got a lot of rad stuff. And I was in there the other day, just kind of like nerding out on some things because I'm into certain things I just overlooked for a long time.
Yeah.
And the bar itself is badass, man. And it's like, it's one of those places you pull into the back. It's a compound. So there's only motorcycles in the back. And it's like, get you a beer, walk through the whole area. You're not like confined. You got to stay in this range. It's just, the reason we don't do more stuff there is that it's typically an older crowd.
Sure.
And you know how older crowds and younger crowds, they don't always mix party-wise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because, like, the younger performance guys, like at our bike night in Deep Ellum, we have a stunt crew that comes through. They'll do their burnouts, a couple wheelies, and everybody there loves it.
Yeah.
Well, at that bar,
No go.
they don't like that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, well, we'll keep this over here. We'll do this over there.
Yeah.
But if, like, people are coming to Dallas, like, I want people to go see Strokers. I want them to see that experience and see what...
How far away is all that stuff from Yellow Rose Canyon?
Like a little over 100 miles. It's not bad.
Okay. So I don't know which direction where we're staying is.
Yeah, you got to pass it, Yellow Rose, to get to Dallas and then go back.
Whatever.
But, it's like the Yellow Rose is, it's... I'm excited because they apparently got new bathrooms this year, and I can't wait to see. I will say the bathrooms were shit, but no, they got them fixed, hopefully, or just some better ones. But dude, it's just a great opportunity to have, every year. Like, it seems like this year there's a lot more people from California coming, which is nice. It's the perfect time of the year to be traveling across the country, especially in the southern part of it.
How many people from Born Free California builders are coming to display?
I don't know
at
how many
Texas?
builders. I know that there's a good amount of Texas builders like for that one.
Yeah.
And the whole point was they really wanted. I don't know if they were.
No, what I was saying is I didn't know if the people that built for California.
I don't know.
were
I mean, I'm
also
sure maybe the
displaying.
ones that are, like Jason and Daryl will probably have their bikes there, and maybe some other people that plan on hitting both, right? But
right.
I don't know that. Everybody from California. I mean, California is just such a hotbed for motorcycles, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like if they had a Born Free Florida, it'd be fucking full of people. And there's just so many people that ride bikes here.
Yeah.
Maybe not seen people,
There is a lot of motorcycle people in Florida.
Yeah, dude, there's a fucking biker bar in every goddamn town, it seems like.
Yeah.
Campground, retirement center.
Plus all kinds of people made, Daytona their home. They never left.
Yeah.
You know what I
Came here
mean?
and said, fuck the snow.
Yeah. I got some old friends down there. They're like, "You coming to whatever thing down?" I'm like, "No, probably not. I mean, y'all have a good time. I'm happy for you."
Bikeoverfest or something like that.
No, this is regular, like a Sunday afternoon at OB's or something. That's, you know, it's been challenging to navigate that, you know, trying to, you know, do a business and, you know, pursue this as a career and still having Daytona, you know, because there's a lot of aspects of Daytona that, you know, it's more that the rally.
Yeah, party.
You know, that it's great. You know, I mean, I don't really want to say anything bad about it because it's very convenient for. It's always been great to me one way or the other. You know, before it was party, and some people don't understand why I don't want to do a party out of it.
Yeah.
You know, just want to go and have a good bike show. You know, it's business.
I mean, there's parts of Florida that I like. Like, I love doing my buddy's camp out over in Inglis out there. Mm-hmm. But the last time I did his camp out, I went and did Key West afterwards. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's in, you know, November, right? So it's pretty decent weather to ride.
Yeah.
And it kind of ruined me because now I think Key West is the best part of Florida.
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
I mean, there's like, it's cool in Jacksonville. I mean, the towns are cool. It's like there's a lot of pretty shit everywhere, but just collectively in one spot, it's just like, this has got everything I need and I can walk to it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Jacksonville here's changed a lot it's been 13 years since I lived in Jacksonville Beach, and Jacksonville Beach was very different. Riverside was great. Jacksonville Beach was great. Not knocking other areas of town, but there was definitely significant scenes that were happening there. You know, in Jacksonville Beach, there was, you know, 3 or 4 bars that, as we all got into motorcycles and cars, man, we'd all hit them, and you'd hang there for a little bit till everybody kind of gathered together, then you'd all go hit the next one. And unfortunately, most of that stuff shut down. But for a while there, I mean, there was 3 places that were like music venues. You know, were like
a lot of our music venues in Deep Ellum are starting to kind of wash up.
Yeah,
Oliver's literally like the last man standing to hold out from all the gentrification that's taking place in like Deep Ellum. And don't get me wrong, like I tend to like gentrification as far as like the areas. Oh, now I can come over here and have decent food and
right. Yeah, there's definitely pros to it.
I mean, I feel bad for like people that are maybe getting displaced and whatnot, but I mean, fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Take it from the Indians. It don't work out too well.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean,
but you know, Deep Ellum is such a historic part of Dallas, and like literally Elm Street is the only street left with old bars, you know, like trees and I think it's one of the only ones left. But you know, everything else on the other streets are all like modern fucking like super high-end bars. It's like $10 a beer. It's kind of, you know.
That's what took over Jacksonville Beach, and what happened was the real estate guys all got into being, you know, the mayor of the city and different divisions of the city, so they kind of just regulated that. And all the, you know, when I was a kid, my grandfather owned a bar on the boardwalk. You know, it wasn't Atlantic City, but it was, you know, it was a boardwalk deal, Ferris wheel, go-kart, skee ball, the whole deal, you know. And gradually over time, you know, when I was coming up as a kid, all that stuff was just shut down and run down. And then there was a time period when, you know, in my early 20s, when those were cool bars down there. There was rock and roll and punk bars, and you go down there and get in a lot of trouble. You know, it was fun, you know. But then, you know, years later, they turned them into higher end stuff like that, and they never last.
Yeah.
You know, there's nowhere to park down there. You know, that's what we just sold our property down there because I was like, man, you know, this is supposed to be prime real estate, but it ain't nothing but just debauchery going on around here. I'm trying to rent an apartment to a lawyer. He's like, hey man, there's a kid throwing up outside right next to my car, but they still want $12 for a beer, you know, on the boardwalk. So I guess it just happens like that everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, we still have the holdouts in some good little areas, but that's the point about knowing locals, man. Yeah. Like, you know, I try to tell people, you come to Dallas, I'll let you know where to go. Yeah. You know, when I go to towns, I want to know people. Like, otherwise, my ass is going to be at Chili's.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Getting El Presidente.
Right.
And some chips and salsa. So it's like, help me not do that.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty convenient sometimes.
Yeah, man. That was the way it just was, man. When I had those connections over in Europe and in Iceland, man, that was the raddest. You go see a foreign country and you get the whole cultural experience of eating where the locals eat, and and not only that, but it was also the financial hookup where it's like, no, I know Mario down here and he gives us trays of whatever pasta, and but also had they knew of all the different places to go, and it was awesome, man. But that's how we had it down in Jack's Beach, where you took the back roads, you didn't sit in no traffic.
Knew where to park on the bikes. No, you didn't have to fuck with no parking.
We had up front parking everywhere we didn't go. You walk in and the bartenders all know you're, hey fellas, everyone else is bummed out.
the line, they're like, hey, what do y'all want? It's like skip the whole fucking.
What's up, boys? Same. Cool. Have your little spot.
Man.
It is the best. I wouldn't know. There's one bar left, and it's called the Fly's Tie Irish Pub, and that family has owned it for forever. It's the first place my band ever played.
Nice.
But it's tiny, and that's apparently the last place you can go that's got any of that old vibe down there. But I don't go out and party like that no more. It's too much. Get in too much trouble. They don't get motorcycles built.
Yeah, I've probably been doing more party. I've been doing more socializing since I've been home than I probably should be.
Yeah.
But we have a cool little cruise that happens every Sunday in one of the areas of town where it's just all old school lowriders.
Oh,
and
nice.
A lot of the families and car clubs just like line the streets and cook, and there's like badass tacos everywhere. And it's just a cool vibe. Cops are cruising, but you can sit on the curb and have a beer like in a bag and shit,
Yeah.
Nobody's tripping. And then I do my bike night. And that's about it,
Man, when we did an open house around, Mike Wilson's and in the Inksmith and Rogers tattoo family and shops and stuff, and they had a 45-year anniversary, which,
damn,
man, I've known of all the people that tattooed there way back in the day when Eric still tattooed there, and the guys I built cars with, they all tattooed there, so I'm obviously attached to all that stuff. And we did it at the 40th at the old shop, and Oliver and Greg Christian, everybody came by. Oliver wasn't in town this year for the 45th, but we coordinated an open house, man, and our buddy Cody is in the Dukes Car Club in California. He drove his car all the way from California. And there's a Dukes chapter down, not to speak out of turn about somebody else's club or whatever, but there's another chapter of guys down the St. Pete area, and they had both their cars out front. I was equally as proud to have those cars out in front of the shop as to have all the other people. We're very thankful that we had, I think at one time on a Saturday there were 60 people in here, which is a lot for a shop that's closed to the public, and it ain't like we put out a flyer. That was all word of mouth. Come by the shop Saturday. This is when we're open.
That's pretty cool.
So it was rad.
Good, man.
Well, all those guys, they all, actually Greg Christian hung out for a couple of days. But all those guys ride, and they kind of keep up with what we do and need something. And pretty much everybody that I build bikes for or have built bikes for is all either a tattoo artist or linked up with that somehow, and I'm thankful for Mike. About all that stuff. He travels all around the country. He's like, oh, my buddy so-and-so up here was talking about having something done to whatever, and next thing you know, his bike's coming down from wherever, and we're hooking it up, and it's awesome because a lot of those guys like the art behind it too. That's what's really cool with working.
Yeah, it's like I was saying earlier in the podcast. It's like working for people that are, connoisseurs of art. You know what I mean? They like to collect it. It has sentimental value. It's like that's literally the best kind of clients.
My friend Steve Tiberi, we met. Man, it was probably in the late '90s, and we all got this tattoo, which is a hobo sign, and it means man with gun. But the other guys that I got it with, we all drank, so that's why mine has a martini glass. Like swing music was real big back then, but Steve Tiberi don't drink, so he got one without the martini glass in it. And years later, he got a hold of me and was we did a bike for him. We did a Softail for him that he inherited from another guy that died. And then he got in a wreck. We redid that into kind of a tough guy, rigid frame bike. And I did a big Mr. Lucky airbrush hand pinstripe on the top of the tank, and did a bunch of hand tooled art on his bags and stuff. And it was really cool to collab with them. He's really into the old punk rock dude, Johnny Thunders. So we did his saying LAMF I pinstriped on the belt. And we did a whole bunch of like collab on that. So it's really cool to work with that crazy FXR, the FXRP that I did with Jeff Brown up in Maryland. That's Oliver Jones's buddy.
Yeah.
You know, that was cool to work with. You know, working with people like that, and you know, tattoo artists and skateboarders and stuff, they're just really easy to get along with, you know.
Yeah.
Some people have tighter budgets, some people are different with their money a little bit, but for the most part, they're like, man, I really try to do a lot of correspondence. If you're in the hot seat and we're working on your bike, you're getting a text from me almost every day.
Nice.
Like, this is what cool stuff's going on your bike, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm jazzed about it, you know, and I like to keep people involved, and they're jazzed, and everybody's happy, man. I've never really been into like, so I tell people all the time, everyone's like, oh man, everyone's so honest, you know, here, and you do what, everybody does what they say they're gonna do, and you kind of meet the deadlines, and I'm like, man, I don't want anybody, we get paid enough money for people to be mad at us.
Yeah.
So I'm not into that. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna tell you, hey man, we're running behind or whatever, and man, it's just, for the most part, everybody's stoked to be around. I mean, it's a cool feeling, you know, especially doing, now more than, you know, like I said, it's been a minute since we did, you know, with the Born Free bike, like building a piece of art back in that again, man. It's like, I'm very thankful it's a cool time.
Does it feel good, like to be?
Feels so good.
I mean, it's stressful, obviously, but it's like it's like a, like, I don't know, like that stress, to me, is intoxicating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. My buddy Bird, he goes by Carnival Bird on Instagram. He was in People's Champ the same year I was. And we have a bond that year. You know, all the guys are in that year because there was I won't get too deep into it, it's been talked about a lot, but everyone kind of felt like there was an injustice that year, you know. And when we finally all met up out there, everyone was just like, man, what a bunch of BS, and let's go have some beers together. And we just, like, really over an afternoon,
bonded over the inequality, if you will.
But that, and just what you're talking about is the you know, not to sound like we're complaining about the experience, but it's a struggle to, you know, to build like that on a deadline for that kind of show and everything. And we bonded on a Friday, held it all weekend, and just became, I still, you know, we text back and forth and stuff. And he hit me up when he's seen the name on the invited builders list, and he's like, I forget what he said, I'd have to look it up. I was trying to quote it the other day, but he's like, something like, now it's time to stress and whatever, but and have the very best feeling or something like that at the end. And that's really what it is, you know. Like if you didn't have that stress and those variables, you wouldn't be pushing yourself.
Exactly.
And then you're not getting anything out of it. You know, that to me was, you know, I was telling my wife and my close friends, I'm like, this is gonna be killer, man. Because at the end of it, there's gonna be different skill sets that have been dabbled in, and you know, we might not be the biggest experts on it, but we tried. To me, it was trying, like with the epoxy, you know, and working with a lot of aluminum and different, it was all these ideas that I had that, you know, it's not appropriate on a different bike here and there, but when it's like anything goes, because that's a killer thing about Brian Taylor, you know, like we really jived about, you know, I talked him into painting that shovel head. I didn't talk him into it, but you know, I always have here's some suggestions.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about this? Well, I was kind of thinking this, you know, and like we were joking that bike's the Kit Kat Mint Duo bike, because it's that color and the flames are the brown root beer. They're not root beer. They're that whatever paint huffer color, you know. And Brian's great with like, it doesn't really, I don't really have to talk him into it.
Yeah, he trusts
you know.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, man, I'm getting it. Or if you don't, we send a couple of different messages back and forth. But he's like kind of anything goes, to the point that getting this bike together, I was like, well, I mean, what's the limitations on this? It's like you do it how you think.
Oh yeah,
man, that's great.
It's a good feeling to have the people that have confidence in you. It kind of, when I've said it a lot, but that emotional roller coaster of being creative, right? Like you go up and down, and sometimes having a customer, your wife, or anybody, your friend coming through and go, "That's sick." It's like it helps you out of ruts to kind of keep pushing the ball forward.
Yeah.
And like for me, it was like I'd be in the shop and I'd be like, "Man, like, does this fender work? I like it. I see it, but I don't know. Like, I need an opinion." You send it to all your friends. 3 dudes say it sucks, and one said it looks good. I'm like, I know, right? It does look good, right?
Yeah,
so you see what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like it's good to have those kind of things, but ultimately,
Dude, I tried an idea. I'd been sitting on a tire that I haven't seen used a lot, and it's a C or K block Metzler tire, and it's a sidecar tire. Mm-hmm. I just like the tread pattern. It's very blocky, and I'm like, all right, it's anything goes. Ordered that tire up. I was like, all right, well, I haven't really done the 60s Sportster style rear fender since I did Francine, even though, it's been done here and there. I was like, man, I think I'd like to try to use that again. Man, I narrowed the nicest fender, had that tire on it. That whole tail section of that bike came apart so many different times. And right before I mounted the fender that's going on that bike, I put that Sportster fender back on it one more time, and I was like, still no. Now it's tall, and with the tire being tall, it made the whole back half of the bike look like an ice racer.
Yeah.
It was just really weird, and the front end already looks like there's nothing on it. It just if it's right, it's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got a nice little stash of a bunch of junk that didn't fly on the bike up there. That's another thing I want to maybe try and do. I don't know where the swap meet is in relation to where we're going to set up to vend.
If you're not in the bowl, it's pretty close. So the bowl is like where mainly the sponsors of the show are set up. Personally, I've been in the bowl the last couple of years, but I think the bowl shuts down at night, right? Which you kind of, for you guys, that'd be good.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to create in my vendor space. I kind of want to be outside the bowl this year because I want to create a hang and chill space.
Yeah.
And that part of the vendor space is kind of out where the what do you call it, the swap meet and all that.
I just figured.
Yeah, bring some shit, man.
I'm just gonna bring it, and we'll just set it up and just have it, because a lot of this stuff would be nice. It's not really shippable, wheels and frames and front ends.
I'll be looking, so we'll see.
Yeah, man.
We'll see what happens. Well, cool, man. Hey, I did drive here, and it's getting late. And
I'm pretty tuckered myself.
Yeah, I do appreciate the premieres. And it's good to be back in your shop, man. It's a badass spot. I hope you get to keep this thing.
Man, thank you so much for coming. Everything. It's always fun, man. Thanks.
100%. All right, we'll catch up with you. Thanks,
cool,
bud.
Man. Thanks.
I want to thank Fish for the late night podcast, and I'm very excited to see his completed build at Born Free, Texas, going down on October 17th through the 20th, a 4-day bike show, camp out, and all-around good time at the Yellow Rose Canyon in East Texas. We are hosting the official Born Free Texas pre-party here in Dallas at the legendary Strokers Dallas on Wednesday, October 16th. Please take a moment to check out our sponsors in the description below, and if you're looking to join our community over on Patreon, you will also find a direct link below. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.